Ever get that feeling that even the most familiar stories, the ones you think you know, actually hold secrets, deeper meanings, just sort of waiting for us to uncover them? That's really the core of what we do here. You bring the sources and we act as your guides, carefully, extracting the most insightful bits so you gain real understanding, but without feeling totally overwhelmed.
Exactly. It's about going beyond just the surface story and exploring the underlying ideas, the connections that spark those aha moments. That's what really enriches our perspective.
Today, we're diving into a really revealing section from the life of Sri Ramakrishna, a complete biography, specifically chapter 47.
Right.
This chapter gives us a front row seat, basically, to the very first encounters between Sri Ramakrishna and several people who would become his key disciples.
Quite a few, actually.
Yeah, Sasi Sarada Prasanna Mitra, Harinath Chatterjee, Gangadhar Ghatak, Sarada Prasanna Mitra, Tulasi, Charan, Dutt, and Hariprasanna Chatterjee. It's quite a list, a diverse group.
And what makes these early meetings so compelling, I think, is you really witness the sheer variety. Different backgrounds, different sort of spiritual starting points.
Really?
It's fascinating to see how Sri Ramakrishna's early guidance starts to gently shape and direct their unique journeys.
Absolutely. So our mission today, if you like, is to really understand those first meetings. What was it about Sri Ramakrishna that clicked so deeply with such different people?
Yeah, what was the draw?
And what were those foundational pieces of wisdom he shared right at the start? Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start with the cousins, Sasi and Sarat Chakravarti.
Right, so these two, they came from a devout Brahmin family in Calcutta, and they were already involved quite actively in a Brahmo organization. That's a sort of reformist Hindu movement, influenced heavily by Kashab Chandra Sen at the time.
Right.
Their introduction to Sri Ramakrishna actually came through other members of that Samaj who'd met him.
So word of mouth, basically.
Pretty much. And this eventually led to their Brahmo Society planning their anniversary celebration out at Dakshinswar. That's where Sri Ramakrishna lived at the Kali Temple complex. This was October 1883.
Right. So picture that first meeting. Sasi and Sarat, they find Sri Ramakrishna in his room. He's sitting on a small bed. He welcomes them really warmly, offers them a mat, asks about their connection to Keshav's group, which seemed to please him. And then he introduces this really thought-provoking analogy about bricks and tiles.
Ah, yes, the bricks and tiles. What's so insightful here is how he uses this everyday image to explain something profound. It's about the importance of building a strong spiritual foundation, being stamped with spirituality, as the text puts it, before getting too tangled up in worldly stuff.
Okay, like laying the groundwork first.
Exactly. He suggests this inner grounding gives you resilience, against getting too attached later on. Why do you think that analogy would hit home for young guys like Sasi and Sarat back then?
That's a good question. Maybe it spoke to their anxieties, young men facing pressure, career, family.
Right, expectations.
Yeah. So this idea of a spiritual base first.
Yeah.
Maybe it felt like stability. He then shifts to something related. The practice of parents arranging early marriages.
Yes, he points out how this often leads to a life just focused on family duties, the struggle to make ends meet.
The daily grind.
Right, and it potentially leaves very little time or, frankly, energy for spiritual growth. It wasn't like a total condemnation of marriage.
Well, no.
More a comment on how it can become a major distraction from spiritual life if you jump in too soon.
Which naturally leads to the big question about marriage itself. One of them asks, is marrying just wrong? Is it against God's will? And Sri Ramakrishna's response is fascinating. He doesn't give a straight yes or no. Instead, he points them towards the Bible.
Yeah, specific passages, Christ's views on renouncing marriage for the kingdom of heaven, and St. Paul's take on it being sort of a concession to human weakness. What do you make of him using the Bible there?
Well, it really shows his universal outlook, doesn't it? Drawing wisdom from everywhere.
Definitely. It connects with them too, because through the Brahmo Samaj, they'd already be familiar with Christian ideas.
Right, meeting them on their ground.
Yeah.
Okay, here's where it gets really juicy. After they read these parts, Sri Ramakrishna declares marriage is the root of all bondage.
Whoa, strong words.
Exactly. And someone there challenges him, very practically. Well, hang on, how would creation continue if everyone gave up marriage?
A fair point. And Sri Ramakrishna's clarification is crucial. He stresses he's not making some universal rule against marriage.
Okay.
He's highlighting its potential to create attachments, the things that bind us to the material world. He acknowledges, if you're inclined to marry, go ahead. His insights are for personal reflection, not rigid commands. That nuance is so important.
Then Sasi makes this incredibly honest admission. Sri Ramakrishna asks about believing in God, with form or without form. And Sasi just says, actually, I'm not even sure God exists. What struck me was the master's reaction. He seemed really positive about this frankness.
Exactly. It just underlines Sri Ramakrishna's focus on sincerity, right? The genuine search for truth matters more than just, ticking the right boxes or following dogma.
Yeah.
He appreciated Sasi's honesty. He saw it as better ground for growth than just blind faith. What does that tell you about his teaching style?
It feels very personalized, meeting people exactly where they are spiritually speaking, not imposing some strict belief system right away.
Totally.
So after this meeting, Sasi and Sarat are clearly blown away. They decide, okay, we need to visit this holy man regularly, learn more about spirituality.
They're hooked.
And the biography notes, Sasi was already quite interested in religious books, the Bible, lives of saints, that sort of thing. He had daily practices too, prayer, meditation.
So the groundwork was already there.
Yes. He was apparently a brilliant student preparing for his first arts exam, big hopes from his parents. Yet, meeting Sri Ramakrishna leads him to eventually just walk away from all that worldly potential.
It really speaks volumes, doesn't it, about the sheer transformative power of that first connection. Sasi's existing spiritual hunger, combined with Sri Ramakrishna's presence and words, it clearly ignited something much deeper, a calling.
Prioritizing spiritual life above everything else. And Sarat seemed to be on a similar path. Sri Ramakrishna apparently saw a stern spirit of renunciation in him almost immediately.
Right off the bat.
There's this interesting little story, too, about Ganesha. Sarat expresses admiration for Ganesha, the Hindu god.
The elephant-headed one.
Yeah, but Sri Ramakrishna gently corrects him. Suggests Shiva is actually his ideal because Shiva embodies qualities that resonate with Sarat's own nature.
And what's fascinating there is Sri Ramakrishna's almost intuitive grasp of Sarat's inner qualities. He just knew.
Totally. And then he says something incredibly potent, almost mystical. Think of yourself always as Shiva, and of me as Sakti. I am the fountain of all your power, Sakti.
Wow. Okay, so Sakti being the divine feminine energy, the dynamic force.
And Shiva, the pure consciousness, the static aspect.
So it's like this profound initiation connecting Sarat to this powerful spiritual identity.
The text calls it a mystic utterance. And yeah, its full depth is maybe hard to grasp, but the biography points out how Sarat did later show those Shiva-like qualities.
Like what?
Deep calmness, fortitude, forbearance, real sympathy for others. It's as if Sri Ramakrishna saw that potential and started nurturing it from day one.
Remarkable insight into people's spiritual makeup.
Yeah.
And the ability to guide them towards their strengths. Sarat also apparently wanted to see God in all creatures, not just a specific form.
Right.
Which Sri Ramakrishna praised as a very high aspiration, shows a mature understanding, of the interconnectedness of everything.
And then get this, Sri Ramakrishna revealed that both Sasi and Sarat had been followers of Jesus Christ in a past life.
Whoa. Okay. What do you think is the significance of saying something like that?
Well, it hits that universalist theme again, doesn't it? Suggests spiritual seeking continues across lifetimes, across traditions.
Makes sense.
And it probably resonated deeply with them, given their Brahmo background and knowing Christian teachings. Okay, let's switch gears slightly. Harinath Chatterjee, his story feels different.
Yeah, different vibe. Orphan young, raised by his brother, emerged as a natural leader among his friends, known for being fair. But it's his early spiritual intensity that really jumps out.
Oh, absolutely. His relatives were apparently amazed by it. He followed incredibly strict orthodox Brahmin rules.
Like what sort of things?
Bathing 3 times a day, cooking his own food, which he offered to God first. And this is amazing, reciting the entire Bhagavad Gita from memory before sunrise.
Yeah.
Every day.
Wow. That's dedication. And he was drawn to Vedanta philosophy.
Deeply. Especially Advaita Vedanta, the oneness of the soul and ultimate reality, Brahman and the philosopher Sankar's teachings. There's that vivid story about the crocodile in the Ganges while he was bathing.
Oh, yeah.
He felt fear, obviously, but it clashed with his Vedantic belief in the immortal soul. Big internal conflict.
What did he do?
He decided to finish his bath anyway, showed real commitment to his philosophy, even when faced with, primal fear.
That says a lot. And it's mentioned his brother was supportive of all this.
Yeah, which probably helped him develop so intensely, so young.
Makes sense. So Harinath himself talks about his first meeting with Sri Ramakrishna at Dinantha Bose's house in Baghbazar. He was only 13 or 14.
Right. He describes Sri Ramakrishna as being mostly absorbed in samadhi, that deep spiritual state. Says he looked thin, almost otherworldly, and he thought he saw like a halo around his face.
Wow.
That was his impression. His immediate thought was comparing him to Sukadeva.
The great sage known for purity and wisdom. High praise.
Definitely. He also saw Sri Ramakrishna bow before a picture of Kali, the goddess, and sing this song about how Krishna and Kali are essentially one. Said it profoundly affected everyone there.
So, a powerful first impression, even if indirect.
Very. Their second meeting was a couple of years later at Dakshineswar itself. It was a festival day, packed with people.
Right, busy.
So Sri Ramakrishna actually asked Harinath to come back on a quieter day so they could talk properly.
Wanted a real conversation.
Yeah, and Harinath developed this deep reverence. He felt that even though Sri Ramakrishna hadn't had formal schooling, he had this incredibly deep grasp of the sastras, the scriptures.
An intuitive understanding.
Exactly. He even said Calcutta felt like hell compared to the peace he felt around Sri Ramakrishna.
That's quite a statement.
But then comes this really crucial moment. Sri Ramakrishna strongly corrects Harinath about his negative views towards women.
This is a big one. What did he say?
His words were direct, forceful. Something like, "Why do you look down on women? They are manifestations of the Divine Mother. Bow down to them with respect. That's the only way to escape their influence. The more you hate them, the more you'll fall into the snare."
Powerful. And transformative for Harinath, the text says.
Completely. It challenged his ingrained views, pushed him towards a more respectful understanding. Why do you think Sri Ramakrishna tackled that so head-on?
Well, maybe he saw that Harinath's intense asceticism, while maybe admirable in some ways, was tipping into a kind of aversion.
Like an imbalance.
Yeah, an imbalance that could actually hinder a truly inclusive spiritual view. Sri Ramakrishna was always about seeing the divine in everyone.
Makes sense. After this, Harinath asked about recognizing the dawn of true knowledge. How do you know when it happens?
And the master uses that beautiful analogy.
The philosopher's stone.
Right.
Turns base metal into gold. The outer form might look the same, but the inner nature is totally changed.
Great way to put it. So Harinath, staying true to his Vedantic leanings, embraced austerity, celibacy. But he got so engrossed in studying Vedanta that he started visiting Dakshineswar less often. Sri Ramakrishna noticed.
Of course he did.
And he asked him basically, what's the core teaching of Vedanta? What was Sri Ramakrishna's take on that?
He pointed out how incredibly hard it is to truly see the world as unreal, a key Advaita idea, just through your own intellect, your own effort.
Right, it's not just an intellectual exercise.
No. He stressed the vital role of divine grace. You need God's help to achieve that profound realization. Then he sang this devotional song about grace, got deeply emotional, even cried.
Wow.
And this moved Harinath so much, he felt this deep sense of surrender.
It just beautifully shows Sri Ramakrishna's emphasis on both paths, doesn't it? The head and the heart. Intellect and devotion.
Yeah, not either.
And his deep affection for Harinath really comes through, pleading with him emotionally to keep visiting Dakshineswar because he believed that was the place Harinath would reach enlightenment.
Okay, moving on, we have Gangadhar Ghatak. Interestingly, he first met Sri Ramakrishna on the exact same occasion as Harinath, both about 14.
Small world. And like Harinath, he was already deep into religious practices from a young age.
Yeah, same routine. Bathing 3 times, cooking his own food, studying the Gita, religious books.
That's familiar.
He even had a brief spell where he wandered off with a sadhu, or an ancient monk.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but he came back home because he was worried about his parents. Later, he went with Harinath to visit Dakshineswar in 1884.
And how was he received?
Very warmly. Sri Ramakrishna treated him like he already knew him. Now, Gangadhar was pretty orthodox, right?
Very much so, it seems.
So initially, he avoided eating the temple prasad, the food offered to the deity. He'd visit in the evenings and only take like fruit or sweets.
Avoiding the cooked food.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Sri Ramakrishna noticed this and encouraged him to take the cooked food offered to Kali. He explained how pure it was, even said it had a special spiritual potency, better than even super pure stuff like Avisha.
So putting a spiritual spin on it.
Right. Gangadhar was hesitant, but found it hard to refuse the master directly.
I can imagine.
And there's this sweet detail. Sri Ramakrishna actually watched to make sure Gangadhar went to the right place to get the prasad.
Making sure he followed through. Did he eat everything?
He still avoided fish and meat. Then there was another instance Sri Ramakrishna offered him betel to chew.
Bhyan.
Yeah, Gangadhar declined that too, wasn't used to it.
Still sticking to his guns somewhat.
But Sri Ramakrishna's advice to Gangadhar shows another side of his wisdom. He told him to hang out with Narendra.
Naren, even though Naren was known for being less conventional.
Exactly. Eating fish, meat, not following all the rules. Sri Ramakrishna's reason. He said Narendra's mind was always on the heights, focused on Brahman, the ultimate reality.
So looking beyond the surface actions to the inner state.
Totally. It suggests Sri Ramakrishna valued the inner focus over just outward rules. And Gangadhar actually was impressed when he visited Narendra at his house.
Okay, so the advice worked on some level.
Yeah, but he still wrestled with Sri Ramakrishna, seeming a bit lax about traditional rules. Then there was this incident where someone complained about the master encouraging young boys towards renunciation.
Stirring up trouble, potentially.
Right. But Sri Ramakrishna's response was profound. He talked about the inherent purity of these boys, how much spiritual merit they must have earned in past lives, to be so drawn to God and renunciation so young.
Framing it in terms of their past karma and inherent nature.
Exactly. And that explanation really resonated with Gangadhar, settled his doubts.
Cleared things up for him.
And even during Sri Ramakrishna's final illness at Kasapur, Gangadhar kept visiting, kept serving him, while still maintaining his own orthodox ways. But the association definitely strengthened his own desire for renunciation.
Okay, next up, Sarada Prasanna Mitra. He came from a wealthy background, right? A Zemindar family from Barasat.
Yeah, privileged upbringing. But he was apparently a huge devotee from childhood, loved worship, met Sri Ramakrishna in his teens, and I said the master could just see right into his thoughts.
It's like reading his mind.
Pretty much, yeah. With clarity. There's one really impactful story. It was a hot day, and Sri Ramakrishna asked Sarada to fetch water and wash his feet.
Okay. And Sarada wasn't used to that.
Not at all. He always had servants for things like that. So he was initially shocked, hesitant. What makes this interaction so significant, do you think?
Well, it really highlights Sri Ramakrishna's direct, sometimes unconventional teaching methods, doesn't it?
How so?
By asking him to do this seemingly menial task, he was directly challenging Sarada's pride of birth, aversion to physical work.
Getting him right where his ego lived.
Exactly. And Sarada eventually doing it, apparently with the master's grace helping him, led to this profound breakthrough. His ego cracked, and the spirit of selfless service awoke in him.
Wow. Just from washing feet.
It's often the simple things. And Sarada also had another powerful experience during meditation.
Oh, yeah.
Through Sri Ramakrishna's grace, the text says, even the idea of sex or sensual desire completely vanished from his mind. That's often seen as a major hurdle overcome in spiritual practice.
A significant inner shift. Okay, then we have Tulasi Charan Dutt, 18 years old, from Calcutta. His first encounter was kind of weird, actually. Spontaneous.
How so?
He just heard about a visiting Paramahamsa, a realized soul, at Balaram Babu's house, and decided, on a whim, to go check it out.
Just like that.
Yeah. Found the place packed, noticed an empty seat. Later, he sees Sri Ramakrishna emerge, but he's like staggering, totally absorbed in himself, almost unaware of anything else.
Like he was drunk. Or just completely somewhere else.
The text says staggering like drunk, but absorbed. Tulasi was so overwhelmed he felt paralyzed and just went straight home.
That is quite a first impression. Didn't scare him off completely, though.
Apparently not. It wasn't until later, visiting his friend Harinath.
Harinath again.
Who suggested a trip to Dakshineswar. They went, missed Sri Ramakrishna, but saw his photograph in his room. And Tulasi immediately recognized him.
That's the guy from Balara Babu's house.
Exactly. So, Tulasi then goes back to Dakshineswar alone. Finds Sri Ramakrishna having his midday meal. And this is the first time Tulasi actually bows down to him.
A conscious act of reverence this time.
Yes. And then Sri Ramakrishna asks this really unexpected question about acting as an intermediary. What did he mean by that?
He was talking about the role of the guru, the spiritual teacher. The guru acts as the bridge, between the seeker and the divine.
Yep.
He explained the guru is essentially one with God, guiding the disciple towards awakening and union. Tulasi understood the master wanted him to see him in that sacred light.
Defining the relationship.
Precisely. And then there's this tender moment where Sri Ramakrishna puts his hand on Tulasi's shoulder, invites him warmly to visit often.
Nice.
Tulasi also saw Sri Ramakrishna salute the spot where he did his intense spiritual practices, his sadhana, and talking to the Divine Mother in this incredibly exalted state. Though Tulasi admitted he didn't really understand what was being said.
Just witnessing the state itself was probably enough.
You think so. And Tulasi later became a monk after the master passed away.
Okay, last one on our list for today. Hariprasanna Chatterjee from Bulgaria. He got introduced in 1883 while he was in college with Sasi and Sarat.
Right, part of that same initial group. Sri Ramakrishna showed interest, and Hariprasanna visited a few times.
But then he just stopped visiting. So Sri Ramakrishna sent an invitation via Sarat.
Trying to draw him back.
Yeah, but Hariprasanna couldn't accept it. The master even predicted he won't come now.
Interesting. He knew.
Seems like it. Sarat kept trying, but things kept getting in the way, preventing Hariprasanna from going back to Dakshinswar.
Obstacles kept popping up.
During this period, though, Sri Ramakrishna gave him some pretty pointed advice, especially about purity and detachment. Famously said, even if a woman is like pure gold and rolls on the ground through love of God, it is dangerous to look at her.
Strong warning about potential pitfalls, even seemingly spiritual ones.
Very. He also asked Hariprasanna directly if he'd be willing to beg for his food.
Testing his readiness for renunciation.
Seems like it. And the young man said yes, he would.
Yeah.
It's like Sri Ramakrishna saw his future as a monk and was trying to plant those seeds, instill that love for detachment, reliance on God.
And did he become a monk?
Yes, years later, he did.
So, looking back at all these first encounters, what really stands out is just how different everyone was.
Totally. Different backgrounds, different starting points on their spiritual paths, some already deep into tradition, others exploring, some just curious.
Yeah, you've got the orthodox types, the Brahmo reformers, the wealthy kid, the orphan, all sorts.
And yet, what's so striking is how personal and often instantly transformative those first interactions with Sri Ramakrishna were.
He just seemed to have this incredible, almost uncanny ability to see right into them, their inner state, their specific needs, their hidden potential.
Yeah, like he tailored his approach for each one.
Definitely. And we see these recurring themes popping up, don't we? Well, the importance of renunciation, maybe not for everyone, but as a path to real freedom. The deep respect for women as manifestations of the Divine Mother that comes up strongly.
Right, correcting Harinath on that.
And the absolute necessity of divine grace, that idea that you can't just think your way to enlightenment, you need that divine help.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? Which of these first meetings or bits of early advice resonates most with you, with your own understanding of spirituality or just personal growth? And why?
What can we actually learn from these really diverse paths that all led eventually to deep devotion?
Yeah, something to definitely ponder as you go about your day.
I hope you like this chapter. We need volunteers and sponsors to create content with even better quality and with more variety. If you wish to join this initiative as a volunteer or sponsor, please click the links given in description below. To help us reach more viewers, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Biography Central. Thank you for your time. It means a lot. Namaste.